Did you turn it on?
Can you hear me?
Keep talking.
Hello?
Yes.
Susan.
Yeah, we're seeing it go across, so it's picking you up.
Good. Yay.
Do you want to do an introduction for her?
Oh, sure. All right, well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us for our first official on-site and live streaming HFMA Enterprise Membership Event Education Series. And I'm very pleased to introduce to you Susan Donham. She's one of our own members and chapter leaders and here to speak about an area of her expertise, so we're really happy to have you. Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. It is good to be here. Welcome. As Kelly already indicated, my name is Susan Donham. I've had the pleasure of working with HFMA Oregon over the last year or so, and I have been recruited to perhaps help give some feedback on my experience in dealing with compassionate phone skill set. A little bit about me. I'm with a company out of Redmond, Washington, actually, Merchants Credit. And I've been in the debt collection field for almost 25 years, specifically with Merchants Credit for 18. Over the last couple of years, I was promoted to marketing director. And through that experience, I've been able to go into healthcare organizations and financial institutions and teach on compassionate phone skill set. I guess when you're on the telephone and the majority of your phone calls are met with resistance, sometimes that can be a little overwhelming and challenging, and so therefore I created this presentation. And I'm just curious, those of you who are live streaming with us today, if you could provide some feedback on what exactly your role is. I'm curious how many of you are actually on the phone with patients every day, engaging in revenue cycle, maybe patient responsibility of a balance that's due. Perhaps others of you are collecting patient financial information, charity applications, that type of information. If you could just provide some feedback. I'd just like to know who's in my audience. I believe these skills can be used with anything in all communication as we move forward. However, in the beginning, I do like to start with a little video just to relate a little bit of our experience sometimes. Now, these folks are actually, it's a sales call, but it gives a real good example sometimes of what we encounter.
I'm going to have to fix you, manage you.
Video not showing.
You get the audio.
A more micro form of management. Jim, what's that called? Micro. Oh, yes. Now, Jim is going to be the client.
Yeah.
Right, we're going to have to sell to him without being aggressive.
I apologize for that, the video is not playing.
Let's go. All right, fine.
Just listen attentively.
Ring. Look, this is Mike Schroop from the Dunham Paper Company. Oh, that's great. I need paper. Excellent. You want to fuck? We are having a limited time offer only on everything. Promise my wife you today. What is your name, sir? I'm Bill Butler. Really, that's your real name? Dear. My family built this country, by the way. Yes, ma'am. You're all 1 second. That's my other line. What? No, but hello? Yeah. No, I'm so about this stupid salesman. It's so dumb. Probably just gonna keep him on the line forever and not buying anything. Okay. Sorry, that was a kind of emergency. Oh no, what's wrong? You know what? That's private. Boundaries, Mike. I'm sorry, Mr. Butler. As I was saying, we're having a little bit louder. Okay, as I was saying, right now, we're having louder. Okay, our prices have never been lower. So we have to talk loud. Never been lower. Louder, son! Louder! Our prices have never been lower! Now, you listen to me, sir. The 3 words I would describe you as is aggressive, hostile, and definitely difficult. I'm irate right now. Mr. Butler, give me the phone. Why did you hope so? Who is this? Hello, this is Michael Scott, regional manager. Well, this is William M. Butler. Hello, Mr. Butler. How may we help you? Michael, I like the sound of your voice. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy $1 million worth of paper products today. See that sound? Thank you very much, sir. I don't think you'll regret it. Thank you. There is one condition, Michael. Yes. You have to fire hired a salesman that treated me so terribly. Don't do it, Michael.
You may have seen that video before. But it gives a good example sometimes of what we might encounter over the telephone with consumers who may not be on the same page as us. Having said that, a little bit about my story, I just give a little bit of insight into where this presentation came from. It's just a bit of a story of how I went from being a very stern bill collector to compassionate customer service. I'm going to explain what happened, what I changed, and how it helped, what motivated me in order to create such a presentation. Regulation is what motivated me in the very beginning, combined with certain personal aspects that I was walking through at the same time. In our industry, well, some of you may have remembered the financial crisis of 2008. It was quite an experience if you were there, and it was even more of an experience if you were on the phone during that time. Human being to human being, you couldn't help but relate to the financial stress that Americans were under at that time. And then imagine yourself calling into a household, having to somehow persuade them to take care of their past due medical debt. It was an extreme challenge at that time because you could relate to their hardship and the agony, and that you still had to call in and you had a job to do on behalf of your client. So that was one of the very first instigators that started to have me take a look at how I was performing on the telephone and what type of things I could change in order to better relate to the consumer. Following that was the Affordable Care Act of 2010, which was a huge impact for medical providers. We were called a 501R implementation. And internally, from our agency perspective, our clients were under extreme change, and they weren't quite sure how that was going to look all the time. And as in the beginning of anything, there's bumps along the way, and you have to communicate in a different way with your clients. And then from the agent perspective, which is what I like to stay on, when you're on the phones every day and you're talking to consumers, but your world in front of you is changing. And that might be, in our world, the criteria that your medical provider is now under and how that looks in front of me on my screen, literally in front of me. The expectations that the medical provider may have that has changed, the duties involved with the agent. So there was a lot of changes in our environment on both the medical side and on the agency side. And then icing on the cake in our world is the Telephone Communications Practices Act, which resulted in some declaratory rulings in 2008 and 2015 regarding express content or consent. So think about it, all of a sudden during this time, as much as we've had the internet around for a while, the uses of technology and the accessibility by consumers who are now motivated off their financial crisis and the pain in which that involved, now have easy access to really become educated in what they can and cannot do. And so we throw in the cell phone usage, which has increased at this time, and the different rules, once again, that we're playing by and what we have to say now. When you're in collections or you're going to be looking to collect a past due amount, and the first question you have to ask someone who's already going to be in a resistant mode with you is, do I have permission to speak with you on the cell phone? It's an immediate, it can be an immediate way to not have to have that discussion. Talking about finances, especially when they're up past due, is a very uncomfortable situation for most people, especially when it's contained around medical debt. So those were a couple of things that was going on in our world that I really got to start looking at how I wanted to perform on the telephone. So topics for training today. We're going to be talking first about clarity within your own job role. I encourage anybody who's listening to the presentation to participate in this. One of the things that I do is I'm a high-performance coach in my spare time. I gained that experience, certification a few years ago as a result of mentoring women in recovery from addiction and alcoholism for over 16 years. And so along came high-performance coaching. And so clarity within your job role is something that you get to take a look at. And so whether you think, well, I don't know if compassionate phone skill set is really going to pertain to me, this piece of the presentation will, because it's going to allow you an opportunity to just self-reflect and take a look at your performance. And then we're going to move into conversing with the patient, overcoming objections, power words and flimsy words, compassionate phone skill set, introduction of the phone call, payment application and question framing, options for payments, and closing the call. And then at the very end, if anyone has any questions or if there's time for that, then we will go ahead and open that up. So beginning with clarity, the ability to think clearly and not be confused. Why is this important? Why is clarity important in your life? To specifically say professional clarity. Yes?
Because if you don't have clarity before, then you're going to say something that you have to own, so it wasn't very good. That's the way I think of it.
So if I can become clear and pause about what I'm wanting to communicate or change I want to effectuate, then yes, clarity is very important. Any other reasons why clarity may be important?
Helps you communicate.
Helps you communicate. And also, how do I know where I want to go if I'm not clear with where I'm at right now?
Mm-hmm.
How often do we pause during the week for just a moment and say to ourselves, how did I do this week? How often do we pause and take an inventory of how well things are going? A lot of us are going to work every day. We're rushing maybe to get out the door. Maybe we got some kiddos we're feeding. We're in this commute, at least I am. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to show up. I got a certain persona that's going to show up in the office. I've got my duties that are going to be there. After work, I'm coming home. I'm talking to the husband, wanting to know what's for dinner, what's our plan. I mean, we're shifting all day long. And throughout that busy week, where have we paused and asked ourselves, where am I at? How do I feel about my job performance? How's that really working for me right now? Where can I improve upon? What kind of things would I like to look at? So those are the type of things that we're going to start going through. So if you have a pen and paper or your tablet or whatever you're taking notes on today, I highly encourage you to participate. It's something fun. We're not going to share our answers with everybody, unless you want to, because it makes for a better presentation. But anyway, here we go. Clarity within your job role. First question, what do you feel most certain and clear about within your job role right now? What do you feel most certain and clear about within your job role right now? I'll give you a hint. It's something you're really good at work. It's what comes easy. You can do it with your eyes closed. You're very clear about it. Those are usually the items that would fall under this one. You're confident about it. Just give a moment to answer that. Next question. What area or areas of your job position would you like to improve upon? What areas would you like to improve upon? Something that might trigger a thought. Is there any area within your job, your professional life, where you kind of look over to somebody else in the office and you compare yourself to them? And you say, how do you do it like this? I don't know how they get all that energy. I don't know how they get off the phone like that. How does that not bother them? You just seem always maybe happy. You're like, how do they generate that energy? Is there an area in which you're comparing yourself to others? That might help give you an answered insight on this. Do you feel clear about what is important for your job role right now? Do you feel clear about it? From the patient experience, if you're talking with patients every day, and if your environment is even somewhat similar to my environment, things change. Regulation changes, new rules come down. The rules of the game somewhat change on a regular basis. There's current legislation, there's things that are impacting that. Are you on the same page with your superior, your boss, the person in charge of you, about what's important for the organization today? Are you clear on that? Perhaps your company lives by a mission statement and they repeat that every day. Or are you an agent who's on the phone on a regular basis and sometimes it's customer satisfaction, other times it's revenue, other times it's phone calls. Which one's at the top of the ladder? And are you clear on that? And if you're not clear on that, if you hesitate at all when you're looking at that question, what could you do to communicate with your superior about making sure you understand that on a daily basis? Is your team clear? The people sitting around you? What do you value most in your job right now? What do you value the most? Maybe you get to work remotely, and you value the time saving for that. Maybe you go to work every day and you love the people you work with. You laugh, you find joy. You value that. Maybe you're sitting here today going, I just value my paycheck. I just need to pay the bills, go home. Maybe that's a value. That's okay too. So what is it that you value? Are you being your best with this? How were you last week with this? For example, let's say you value the relationships in your office, especially for someone who's been with your company for a while. Maybe you've been there for 5, 10, 15 years, and you really value the relationships. Did you tell them this week? Did you communicate that? Maybe a nice special compliment to somebody just for having great energy, for being pleasant when you walk in the door. You know those people in your office. The ones who you come in every day and there's nothing negative going on. They just welcome you, you look forward to seeing them. Have you told them that lately? If that's one of your values? If you value your benefits, if you value being able to work from home, have you shared that with your boss lately? Who's in charge of making that decision? Did you tell them thank you, how grateful you are for that? You know, Jeff mentioned in his presentation about gratitude. That can fall into this category, but how are you expressing your gratitude for what you value? If you value working remotely from home, are you being your best productive self while you're doing that? Are you giving it your all? If it's a value of yours, and you look at that, like, yeah, I really do value this. It would really be a bummer if this went away. I think I'm going to step it up a little bit. If you had to explain what makes you the most successful to someone you were training or mentoring, what would you say? What would you say? What makes you successful? What is it? Maybe what is a idea, a thought pattern that you experience every single day that contributes to your success? What would you say? So the next exercise we're going to do is we go through a series of questions, and it's just to get you thinking. It's just to get you thinking. And the motive behind this on my part, it's a healthy motive. The motive behind this is to help open you up to some willingness to take in the information that I'm going to teach on. That's all. That's all that is. It's a way of allowing you to sit back, take a little bit of inventory. What would I like to improve upon? If you're on the phone with patients, if you're interacting with patients on a regular basis, this is just a way to sit back and say, okay, I'm open to some change. Maybe I'd like to have clearer communication with the patient. Maybe I'd like to hang up the phone more often and not be irritated. Maybe there's some things in this presentation that I'm going to be willing to listen to a little bit more now that I'm a little open to some inventory taking and I see that there might be some room for movement. That's all that is. But before we get into that, we're going to talk about 3 words. 3 words. And this is a fun exercise. I'm going to just give a couple, probably 30 seconds in between each of these categories so that you can write down your 3 words. But here's what we're going to do. So self. When you look at your highest self, when you're performing at your best self, what are 3 words that would describe what that means to you? What is that? So, for example, when I'm at my best, I'm confident. Feeling pretty good. I'm joyful when I'm at my best. I'm happy when I'm at my best. So what are 3 words that would describe your highest self? When you're at work and you're in the flow, you're just doing your thing. Anything can come across and you'll just be in your flow. What are 3 words that would describe you at that time? Does anyone in the room want to share their 3 words, or online? If they want to send a message out, anyone want to share their 3 words? Yeah.
Confident, happy, and motivated.
Confident, happy, and motivated. That's awesome. Anybody else?
More comments.
I think another word that came to my mind was just clear-headed, clear-minded, ability to focus.
Clarity.
Yep.
We'll move on to interactions. Interactions with people, you know. All those energies around you every day. When you are interacting at your top best self, how do you want to see those interactions? How do you want to see those interactions? Maybe compassionately, inspirational. How do you want those lovingly? How would you like those interactions to be? And on those days when you're just interacting at your top, and you know what I mean. You know what to say to everybody, you're in a good spirit, everything's flowing. What's going on? And then the last one somewhat aligns with that last question that we had on the clarity. Success markers. What are 3 words that would describe how you are when you're successful? That would best describe that. 3 words. Determined, consistent, diligent. What are 3 words that would describe what makes you successful? So before we move on, do I have any volunteers to offer up any of their words? And the reason why it's a really good idea to share is because we are not used to asking ourselves these questions all the time. Like we're not sitting down on Wednesday and saying, you know, what are my 3 words that make me feel successful? Most of the time, a lot of people aren't doing that. And so when this exercise comes up, they draw a blank. When I say, what are 3 words? They're just like, oh. So if you have 3 words that you'll share with the audience, it's really helpful in the other people who are joining in on the discussion. Anyone? Yeah.
On interactions, I had put informative, fun, and memorable.
That's great. Informative, fun, and memorable. That really describes you.
Yeah.
You hit it right on. Yeah. Anyone else?
One of my words for success markers is good communicator.
Yep, good communicator. Yep. Which is huge, right?
For me, for interactions, I thought about motivational.
Uh-huh.
I want to be a sense of support, that if you come, I'll help you. And I want you to feel happier when you leave.
Happier when you leave. Oh, that's great. And I have felt all those things with you, by the way. Meeting you over these last, yeah, it's been great. So compassion. Sometimes we forget why we do what we do. I related a lot to this picture just simply because when you're an agent on the phone and you're taking call after call after call, or you're interacting with patients one after another, it's amazing how numb you can become to just what's going on. You know, you can look at a name on a screen or an address on a screen and it's just one after another. And so it's a nice reminder, you know, remember why we're doing what we're doing in the end. We're actually looking to help people, either to resolve a matter or to help with the bottom line so we can continue in the service that we're able to provide. There are reasons why we're doing what we're doing. Did you know the difference between compassion and empathy is action? Empathy is I get to feel how you feel. If you're mad, I'm mad. If you're sad, I'm sad. If you're happy, I'm happy. But what compassion is I understand that you're frustrated right now and I feel your frustration. It's like my window, it's like my door opening up to compassion, but compassion is now I want to help you come out of it. Now I want to help you find some action to take you above and beyond where you're at. That's compassion. And that's the difference between empathy and compassion. So now we'll be moving into the phone skill set conversation training. And I hope that you find this informative. What other words were we using? That I communicated well? First topic I'm going to cover is overcoming objections. This piece of it, I'm just going to be opening up your thinking, what do you deal with on a regular basis? Now, if phone work is not your thing, maybe it's objections with employees. Maybe it's objections with your children. I mean, I don't know. Filter it however you need to filter it, but I'm just gonna open up with a few questions for you so that you can kind of start taking a look at what these are every day. And then as I move into the compassionate skill set, I'll be giving some responses that you can provide to help along with that. But first off, what are the routine objections you hear? If you are in line with patients or you're dealing with something over the phone, it's a repetitive task every single day, you will hear the same objections over and over and over. This is not there's not a lot of uniqueness to this. I'd like to think that we as humans are very, unique, but we all kind of have the same stuff. If I'm getting phone calls from somebody explaining to me that I have a past due amount due, for whatever reason, that's either going to be because maybe I didn't follow up on insurance, maybe I have a form I have to return, maybe I didn't get the financial docs needed for that application, maybe I'm unemployed, I have no money. There's going to be simple responses that are just all the time. In regards to those responses, when is the last time you created a new phrase to the same objection you've been hearing? See, I relate a lot with the agents because I was on the phone for so many years. So many years I was on the phone. In fact, I've only been off the phone for a couple of years right now. I've been in the industry for almost 25. So you think about that, and I got to tell you, you can get really good at what you're responding to, but to make your job more creative, to avoid boredom within that job, to keep it mixed up, when's the last time you worked on yourself to create new phrases to patients, a new way of saying things? And if you haven't done that, well, I'm going to help you do that today. That's part of this presentation. Bring new words to your conversations. I used to Google, in fact, I do this quite often even now, synonyms. I'm always looking for the new word. What could mean something different? And then they're more fun to say. Be sure to use verbiage the patient understands. We may have all been in those circumstances. I know in our office it was kind of funny when accounts come into our office because we have a variety of clients. They all go, John may have a bill with, this person and this bank, maybe all over the place, but they'll all come under one account. Well, in our office, we call that a packet. It's just office verbiage. Did you get the packet number? Did you get the packet number? Well, when the individual, the consumer calls in, and I'll hear a new person on the floor say, can you give me your packet? I don't know what a packet is. You have no idea what a packet is. But the universal language is account. EOB. Did you look at your EOB? Okay. I don't always know what an EOB is. It's an explanation of benefits. Did you turn in your TPL? I don't know what that is. You got to spell it out a little bit. Communicate, The most unsophisticated consumer, I think, is what you tend to try to serve. Right? Like always keep that mindset going. And then answer immediately, but don't interrupt. Just a little trick when you're extremely confident in your job, you've been doing it for a while, someone's speaking with you, you can finish the sentence before they finish the sentence because you know exactly where it's going, you know what I'm talking about? Just remember to pause. You can answer immediately, but don't interrupt because interruptions are going to be conveyed as rudeness. How did I change what I was saying on the telephone, and what am I encouraging you to do today? Was I simply, do you ever have something going on, someone's giving you suggestions? Okay, like today, I'm going to give a bunch of suggestions today. And when you leave today, you're either going to make a decision to implement those suggestions or you're not. You may just go back to your desk and say, well, that was great, I'm going to go back to work. It's completely up to you. The only real thing that's ever going to cause change is action. So my boss was always pitching these power words. Now, at this point, when I started changing up how I spoke with patients on the phone, changing up the words, getting creative, I had been with the office for over 10 years at that point. He'd been pitching these things for that whole time. And every now and then I'd use one, and then I'd go back to what I wanted to do. Now, I know better. You ever get in that phase? I know. Or it's a habit. You just got habits. So he would pitch these every Monday in our meeting. And he would talk about the importance of power words. So there was a so-called study, because I did my research and found out there never really was a study, but we thought there was a study, like Harvard or Yale, and they, somebody came up with like 10 or 12 most influential words, so you can influence somebody to do what you want them to do. So when I started doing this presentation, I thought I better look into that, because I can't remember if it's Harvard or if it's Yale, So what I found was nobody ever could find a study, but it was a really smart marketer. And so he had created this list of words. Well, now they're pretty much known to be very effective words. And so what I did, what I'm encouraging you today to do, is I took these words and I would sit at my desk when when going through all those changes, remember the regulation change and all these things were happening. I would sit at my desk and I would pick one word for the day. And I would say, how many phrases can I come up with using this word with the consumer over the phone? How many words, how many phrases, how many sentences can I come up with? And what I found is, when I used these words, people were a lot more pleasant on the other end of the phone. Now, I'm a debt collector at this point. I start thinking, well, now I understand how sales kind of works a little bit, right? Like, people really, warming up to you a little bit with these words. And so then I would go on and pick another word. And when it started happening over time, if you're someone on the phone and you're sitting in a cubicle environment and you've got folks around you, what you'll find is when somebody gets a really good phrase, you'll hear somebody else repeat it. Because it works. It works. And then you hear somebody else repeat it. And so what started happening was I was hearing all these phrases getting repeated, which was really cool, because now we're having like this massive change on our collection floor. And people are engaging in a whole new way. So now what do you have? You have newness to your floor. You have creativity to your floor. Now they're catching on, and after all this year, finally we implemented the power words, and it really works well. So if you take anything from this presentation today, I would encourage you to take this, because this is one of the things that will really help your communication with whoever is in your life. The opposite of power words are flimsy words. Flimsy words, when you're engaging on the telephone especially, flimsy words can give up, I don't really like the word control, but I'm going to use it, can give up control of the phone call. And what I mean by that is they can convey doubt. If you're an agent on the telephone and someone is calling you with a very significant, they're confused. How many of you speak with confused individuals on the phone? Don't understand the insurance, don't understand, this and that. I shouldn't have got the statement. That doesn't read right, and they are confused. If I start inserting flimsy words, it takes away from my confidence as an agent. It kind of gives in. And as you'll see more in the presentation, the more professional sounding you are, the better results you're going to have. Flimsy words are okay, all right, One that we really discourage in our office is they or them. Well, they're the ones that assigned it over here. No. Don't say they or them. We don't want anybody calling back, right? But what is that doing is it's deflecting responsibility from the agent. It's completely taking away their power and their decision-making on the phone call, because it's somebody else's fault. It's somebody else to blame. Therefore, I am not the person that you want to talk to. So then what happens? I talk to your supervisor. And now we've got multiple individuals being involved on the phone call. Time, how much per hour are these folks making? How many times are we going to transfer this call around? You following me? So there's a lot to be said about flimsy words and being able to omit those from your conversations. Just another reminder. So working with compassion, how do we still pull in the income, get great results, and do that compassionately on the telephone? And staying in alignment with the phrasing that I was talking about, same thing. A couple tips on this slide. Listen to the story, don't interrupt, even when you know the answer. I already covered that one a little bit. Let me make sure I understand, then repeat what you heard. This was also in Jeff's presentation about saying no. I think it was something about, let me make sure I understand. And really, this says so much to somebody. And it just drops the walls of resistance. Let me make sure I understand. How often does a patient call in, and sometimes they're overwhelmed? Imagine, you're not the only one they're probably calling, especially if they've got some serious medical issues or they've got other bills that are going past due. You're not the only one they're calling. They just want to be heard sometimes. But have you ever been on that phone call? I was on this call with Dell Computer the other day, or the cable company, and then you say something, and then they totally, it seems like nobody heard that. We're just going to do this. And then you say it again, and you're thinking, am I crazy here? I'm pretty sure that I said this, and they're saying this. And what my experience was is nobody came back and said, let me make sure I understand. There's your clarity. Let me make sure I understand, because if two people are communicating, it's already a heightened conversation, because when we're talking about finances, or we're talking about medical, and we're talking about insurance, conversation's already heightened. What's that mean? We're emotionally reacting. A lot of times the consumer's going to be emotionally reacting. And I sympathize so much with the agents because we too can get caught in the emotional reaction because of the intensity of the phone call. And when it really comes all down to it, we all just want to be liked and we really do want to serve, but there's a lot of emotion on the call. So let me make sure I understand. And then pretty soon everybody's on the same page. Validate feelings if needed, but don't engage in personal hardship story with the consumer. I'm sure that was frustrating for you versus, yes, I've been there too, and let me tell you my story. Because now we've taken a phone call that might have been 5 minutes long, and now we've got about 15 minutes on the phone call. And what happens is the more that the agent engages in their own personal story, if it happens, we get away from the whole objective of the phone call, that was to provide a solution for the past due amount. So you can easily validate the feelings and then move on out of it. And it will also turn the feeling of the phone call around a little bit because the person, once again, now feels heard because you've validated it. You've recognized it's a frustrated phone call. Frustrating phone call, you've recognized it. Relate an anonymous story to reflect you do understand their situation and helped others in similar circumstances. Yes, Mrs. Smith, I appreciate your clear communication with me today. In fact, I just helped somebody the other day in a similar situation, and what we did on that was we set them up on a 6-month payout or 6-month arrangement with payments due by the 25th. Is that something you'd like to take advantage of today? And then you just relate an anonymous story because now they don't feel alone. Okay? So here's some compassionate phrasing for you. These are just a couple things that you can put into your conversations if you like, and if you don't, you'll at least get the idea. A real simple one that we've all been using probably for years, how can I help you? And there's your power word, help. I value your participation in our conversation today. There's that value word. I value your participation in our conversation today. It will assist you in producing a great result for you. There's your power word, result. I value your time. I value your time. You may be the only person on the phone with that individual that day that actually tells them that you value them. Did you ever think about that? You think you will emotionally resonate with somebody if you talk about how much you value their time? Just think about how that can change your phone call around. I understand this can be overwhelming. Let me help you in simplifying the process. Can we all relate to overwhelmment and what that feels like? And then how would it direct that opposite, simplify? Oh, I could use some simplification today. Oh, that sounds great. Insurance billing, statements. Let me simplify this for you. Let me help you with this. I believe I can save you time with a solution. I believe I can save you time with a solution. I was at a conference not too long ago, and I think the presenter said, it's not about the big dog eating the little dog anymore. It's about the one who can move faster versus slower. Because we're in such a tech-savvy environment. Everybody wants it right now, right? You can all relate to that, how much we've changed. Just everything's fast, everything. So let me save you some time. Okay, sounds good. I mean, think about where technology's taking us right now, just in past due receivables. I mean, it's through the roof, right? And so let me see if I can save you some time. I appreciate the time you have spent with me over something so challenging. That is not easy. Once again, you're going to compliment, you're going to use a power word, and you recognize that is a challenging situation for them. And you're simply just offering your gratitude in a way to the patient on the other end of the phone. I mean, how would that serve you? How would that feel for you to hang up the phone and have that experience with somebody? What if you use this with your children? What about your spouse? Right. So now we're going to move into the introduction. How much time am I at?
You have about 15 minutes.
About 15, great. So the introduction. Have a pleasant introduction prepared. Communicate the goal and intention for the time you will spend together. A strong opening will guide the phone call. This kind of leads towards that confidence I was speaking about on the communication with the consumer. The very first opening, at the very opening of that phone call, you're going to be establishing a lot. Am I a confident agent? Am I clear in my communication? Am I setting the expectation? The opening goes a long way in determining the rest of that phone call. So one, you're going to establish how much time you have together. This can be very effective, especially if you're in an environment where folks are saying, I want you on the phone and off the phone within 5 minutes. But sometimes that almost seems impossible. I've been there, I understand that. But if you've got a lot of information to pull from somebody and you're like, I don't know how I'm gonna get all of that, it's how am I gonna move this person along? Because a lot of times they want to be heard, and they want to tell you about their financial hardship, and they want to tell you about the problem. So how do we do that? Well, it'll go a long way if in the beginning of the call, you just kind of set an expectation that we're gonna move this right along. Make it quick and easy. Once again, we're in a fast environment. Remind them that we're gonna make it quick and easy. Set up a payment plan that works for both of you. One of the things I found to be very effective with someone on the phone call was letting them know that in so many words, I'm willing to go half this way if you're willing to come the other half. I'll meet you halfway on this arrangement. How's that sound? You know, because all of a sudden, then you've got two people working for a common solution, but the other person on the other end of the phone hears that. So set up a payment plan that works for both of you. Answer any of their questions. So these are just some of the things that if you can include any of this in your opening, I would highly suggest it. You're not going to be able to fit it all in there because it is an opening. However, that's why I put it's a great place for a script. And usually your opening, if it's consistent, it's the same every single time, it'll just flow. Oh, and one more, explain why certain information is required. And so you'll know your environment, you're gonna know what you're talking about on the telephone. I'm not gonna know that for all of you, I know what mine is. And so you would just look at this and say, which one makes the most sense for me? So an example opening, hello, may I speak with Bob Jones? Now this comes a little bit from my world, just so you know. Things we have to say, hello, may I speak with Bob Jones? This is he, Mr. Jones. I need to verify I have the correct Mr. Jones on the line. Would you mind verifying your address is still correct? There's the address. My name is Ms. Donna. I'm with Merchants Credit Association. I do need to notify you on a recorded line and any information obtained will be used for the purpose of collecting debt. I've said that about thousands of times. I am calling you regarding your bill with OHSU. I'm hoping for a few minutes. I'm establishing something right there. I need a few minutes, not a ton of minutes, just a few, of your time today so I can assist you in setting up a quick and easy arrangement. And you can even pause on the call at that point, say it nice and slow. A quick and easy arrangement so that you bring attention to it so they hear you. And then you can go into your balance or whatever the remaining of your arrangement is going to be with them. But that's just one way how I would insert some of those in the very beginning of the phone call. So payment application. Whenever I'm presenting this with healthcare providers, this is probably the area where I have met the most resistance with their agents, is right here. And I might maybe just a change in environments in front of my experience and their experience, but I really think that coming from my world in expert debt collection is what I'll call it, there's a lot of great tips I can give to help you. And so if you can implement some of this, it will really go a long way. Main thing is, have you vetted the consumer? Have you actually made a professional decision on what you think they can afford? Have you asked the questions? What I have found, because financial discussions are a little bit stressful and overwhelming and scary anyway, that we don't like to ask the questions about the money. Isn't that funny? We're going to collect money, but we don't want to ask you about your money. It's a thing. We're all human. It's a challenging phone call. I understand it. But if I go in and I train anywhere, the very first thing I pay attention to is what are they saying on the phone call to determine what the best arrangement is. Now, this is outside insurance gathering, financial docs, all of that. This is just simply a payment arrangement. How do we best determine that? We got to know some things about the consumer. We got to know. Are we speaking with somebody? Do we know what their income is? Do we even have an idea? I'm not looking for specifics. I'm not looking for down to the penny your tax return from last year. I just want a ballpark. Can you please explain to me here's an example. Hello, Mr. Smith. They go through the opening. I'd be more than happy to assist you with a payment arrangement today. I'm just going to ask you a few questions just so I can qualify you for an arrangement in my office. I'm not looking for any big details, just an overall picture. Would you mind giving that to me? Does that make sense? That's okay. All right, so what we're going to start out with, what is your monthly income after taxes, Mr. Smith? Oh, I don't know. It doesn't have to be specific. You just give me a ballpark. Thank you. How much are you paying right now for your mortgage payment? I always go for the largest expense because that really does, in the consumer's mind, justify part of the reason why they're unable to pay this bill. And it kind of validates their position a little bit. They like providing that, believe it or not, because they get to say, oh, it's like $2,000. I mean, they'll really pour out the mortgage payment for you. You know, it's also going to give you an indicator. Are you talking with someone who owns property, which is, it can be a different mindset of a consumer versus somebody who rents property. It's just a little bit of insight. Mr. Smith, would you mind explaining, how much is your car payment? What are you paying per month on that? Because car payments can be extremely high. And as I'm gathering this information, I'm appreciating, you know, where he's at, and it's giving me a little bit of a financial outlook on it. And depending on what the balance is I'm looking at, I'm already creating in my mind some different options for him. Because and you'll see on the next slide, I'm prepared for that. Okay, so they're just simple questions, but when you're asking these questions, you're also gaining control of your phone call. You're gaining control of your phone call. You are the expert to help them set up a payment arrangement. These questions should be okay to ask. And usually what you'll find most of the time, if you've properly opened up your phone call, you're using those power words, they're going to want to keep going. They don't want to stop here. They want to really tell you the deal. And at that point, you know what, we're just going to make this quick and easy. You know, I've got what I need. We're going to move right along. I need to know about that cable bill. Or the grocery bill. I get little train collectors in my office that don't ask about the children. Because I've got 5 children in my past, and well, they're still with me, but daycare was in the past. I just gave you 5 reasons why I'm not going to pay your debt. You just reminded me of that. Thank you. And then you'll go on, right? So there's some strategy behind it. Keep it simple. Once again, we're back to simplicity. Have 3 options prepared to present. Do this ahead of time. Remember what I said about the objections? They pretty much stay consistent. They don't change up. They're pretty much the same all the time. So why would your responses not be the same all the time? Why would your options not be the same all the time? And maybe you categorize your options. Maybe this is option for a small balance account. Maybe this is an option for a larger balance account. Maybe this is, but you just always have these 3 options. And once they give you that financial application and they're explaining to you what their expenses are, then it's just simply, well, Mr. Smith, I'm going to go ahead and be giving you a few options. Do you mind grabbing a pen and paper to write this down? I want to make sure you got it. Now you're making them accountable. They're going to take some action. Remember what I said. To make change, you got to go into action. Let's go ahead and get into some action. First option, I'm going to go ahead and offer you a 24-hour hold to call your insurance company. That's one of your options you can do right now. You can take advantage of that. Or I'm going to go ahead and divide this balance into 2 payments, and then your payment would be this month, this much this month and this much next month. That's one other option for you. Or you can do 1 payment and then call back with a further arrangement. Which one of those would you like to do? Not can you. Can you is a leading question to know. Which one of these would you like to take advantage of? You see the difference? Simple little changes in how you're communicating on the telephone that'll go a long way in getting the payment arrangements that you would like into your office. Mr. or Mrs. Patient, what would you like to do? There it is. I'm talking, I'm going to read. There we go. Closing the phone call. This is an area where I find that similar to, what was I touch basing on earlier? If I go in and I'm in training and I'm listening, this is the one thing that I am not really hearing expressed by the agent. I'll give you a perfect example. I was training not too long ago. I was at a credit union, and I came in to sit some time with their agents, and this one agent, credit unions, they do a little bit different collections than we would, but they're still great collectors. And this one agent, he was like a superstar. And then he had the best promises to kept. I mean, he was just on fire, and they're like, oh, you sit with so-and-so, he's great. So I go and I love training collectors, I just love it. So I sit down and I'm listening to him, he's got all the great questions, and they're W questions, they're not yes, no questions, and he's flowing, and he's in control of his call, and I'm like, oh, I can see why he's got such a high percentage of promises kept. But then I was noticing, or promises made, but what he didn't have was promises kept. You see the difference? Johnny promises you $50, check is in the mail, Johnny never mails the check. Okay? So I'm noticing that he's got this high percentage of promises made, but the percentage is low. And so I'm listening to this phone call, I'm just so interested. Oh, this is awesome. Pretty soon he says, okay, weak word, okie dokie. You have a great day. And he hangs up the phone, and I thought, he threw in the okie dokie. Right at the end. So he did a fabulous job of professionalism, establishing the phone call control, and then right at the very end, he became their buddy. Am I going to pay my buddy before I pay the other person, the professional person? Or am I going to pay the professional person before I pay the buddy? I'm going to pay that other bill. because this guy just became my friend right at the very end. And I can push Mr. Okie Dokie off for another week. That's how that works. So, and I love pointing it out to him, because I went back like a week or two later to follow up on the training, and I came like, how's Mr. Okie Dokie doing today? But I'm still saying it. I'm working on it. I said, well, that's good, because your promises will stay if you get rid of that. So, anyway. So closing the call, the whole point of that story is closing the call is highly impactful to end all that great work that you did on the phone call. Have you repeated back the expectation of the arrangement? This will include due dates with a reminder of the consequence of non-payment. What is the consequence if they don't pay? Is it that it's going to roll to collections? Is it that they're going to get another phone call? Is it going to be because interest is going to go up? Are they going to get a late fee? Like, what is the consequence of the non-payment? You don't need to stay there. You don't need to marinate in the consequence. Otherwise, you're going to deal with a complaint probably. But just a nice friendly reminder, because they should be given heads up about that. And repeating the expectation back, because people, I mean, we're always in the moment sometimes. And remember, sometimes they're overwhelmed with the financials. Were the important items written down by the patient? Could you please repeat back that, Mr. Smith, what I gave you to write down earlier in the phone call? I just want to make sure you've got it correct. That's all. Did you ask them to repeat it back to you? Important items, okay. Did you stay in control of the payment discussion? And that's pretty much just, did you stay in control? That's leave out the okie dokies. That's all that means. Right at the very end, just leave out the okie dokies. And like I said, friends are easier to not pay. And just a couple things in closing, just things to consider. Honesty with yourself, where could you improve? Where could you improve in this particular presentation in your communication? Goals, have you set any goals lately for your workday? When's the last time you went in with your own personal goals? Whatever that is, maybe it's to establish that value again. Maybe today you just walk into the office and tell 10 people thank you. Maybe you buy somebody a coffee, I don't know. If you got any goals? Enjoyment starts with you. When you enjoy yourself, your patients will enjoy you more. When you're in a good mood, other people around you tend to be in a little bit of a better mood. And gratitude. You have a job that wants to invest in your training and betterment, and coworkers who are in this with you. You cannot be grateful and miserable at the same time. So just remember to always stay in gratitude, and life will be sweet. I think we're about at time, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me.
Good job. Yeah, great job. If there's questions online, you can ask and we'll
Yeah.
let
Do
you know.
we have any questions online? Any comments? I usually find this presentation doesn't generate a ton of questions afterwards. Every now and then I'll get one, but.
Great tip, Susan. Thank you. Mr. Okie Dokie. Yeah. Okay, so how do we start sharing the presentation? So just X, how about this? Yeah. Okay. I don't have to X out of it. Yeah, end webinar.